So as we dive into this next exercise, as I said at the top of the pod, we're going to be creating our own report cards for this Disney era of Star Wars, and we're going to grade everything that's come out, even the things that we haven't gotten a chance to talk about. This will be our opportunity to briefly touch upon them. But before we really dive in, what was this exercise like for you? What was it like to, kind of reflect on some of these things that have come out over the past decade? And what's your assessment overall, before we really
Yeah.
dive in and crunch the numbers? What's your assessment overall of what we have gotten, the things that we have seen, whether it's on the movie side of things or on the streaming side?
So the exercise itself, it was interesting. In my mind, I'm so used to letterbox now. in our stars and our half stars, I'm like, is that a B plus, a B, or a B minus? What is this? What is this thing? And it's so interesting, the things that separate a B from a B plus or a B from a B minus, and so on and so forth. That it did become fun after a while. I actually also found myself going back and being like, you know what? I need to add a minus to this, or I need to add a plus to this for this reason. I was able to ruminate and kind of, again, try to remember and think about how I felt about the particular project, and kind of go at it that way. But it was fun. I think overall, one thing I'm actually surprised at some of my grades in a good way. I really am, because if you ask me, Star Wars, the conversation we just had post Disney, I'm like, it is soulless, and it is, to me, and it doesn't pack the same punch that it did. But individually, some of these projects are fine. I'm like, yeah, this thing is cool. I like this movie over here. I like this show over here. And it got me thinking that, like, it's just it might be just the connectivity of it all, or the feeling of everything when it comes together. But individually, I found myself again being really surprised at some of my grades and being like, you know what? I don't think I dislike it as much as I thought I did, but it's still easy to be disappointed, I think, in the overall picture and everything we've got going. So yeah, man, it was very interesting for me. I was like, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but I understand why I feel that way.
Which that this day and age we live in, the fact that those two things are becoming more and more difficult to disconnect from each other, like they're almost intrinsically linked to one another. Just the idea of a standalone story, and it working, but then how does it ladder up to the bigger vision at play? And I think we're all kind of grappling with the question, like, should we even think about these things in that way? Have we been conditioned to only think about them in that way? It's a lot of the same conversation that's been happening with Marvel, where I think many of us, for a long time, we just kind of called for the idea of, like, just make a good movie, because that worked for them for so long. But now, because they've been on a soft streak, everybody wants everything connected. We want it all to make sense and to lead up to the next thing. So it's like, well, wait a second here. We perfected this tried and true formula that you guys liked for 11 plus years, but now we're continuing to do it, and the films have waned, certainly. And so now you're calling for us to go the complete opposite direction and try to make everything tie in with the bigger vision. And you have to have a bigger vision for that to even work, first and foremost. But secondly, that's also like almost an unrealistic thing to even ask of somebody, because then you're not allowing any vision to come out. You're not allowing for anybody to tell a story and for it to exist on its own merits. Because if everything just becomes interconnected and leads to the next thing, I mean, we're just making commercials and ads for whatever the next film is going to be. And that is certainly, that's not what I want. I would hope that a lot of people wouldn't want that either. So it's interesting to examine these things in that context. And the grading system, it is a pivot, because I'm thinking about things mostly in a numerical fashion, but because we're doing a report card and we're giving out a final grade to what Disney has done, this will be exciting and interesting. And we will get to, talk about a couple of quick things that we didn't get a chance to really talk about in depth on the podcast. And so for those listening and for those watching, what we're going to do here is put together our report cards for the Star Wars franchise under the Disney era. So we're specifically looking at the past 10 years of projects, from Star Wars The Force Awakens all the way until the most recent release of Skeleton Crew, which dropped on Disney Plus in December. And so we're going to go through each individual project that's come out and assign it a letter grade. And then at the end of it, after we've given out all of our letter grades, we will then calculate all the numbers and then total the average for one final grade. And so You went to school. Everybody went to school on the. I'm assuming listening to this podcast, we know what the GPA scale is. Letters they weigh a certain amount. For example, a B plus will be a 3.3 out of a 4.0 on a GPA scale, and so we'll have actual numbers that we can work with to assign out the averages. We'll take all the totals divided by the total amount of projects, which I believe on this list is 19 different projects. So quite a lot to get through here, and then we will figure out what our report cards and our letter grades for Star Wars will be.
Cool.
Any questions? Anything before we dive in and get started?
Nah, man, let's get into it.
So we are starting, of course, with Star Wars: The Force Awakens, the film that provided us the resurgence of Star Wars for this new generation. And I should also point out too that when we're talking about shows, which we'll get to in a second, we're going to do individual seasons. So we won't grade The Mandalorian as just like one total thing. We're going to go through season by season, but we're going to start obviously with movies because that's how we got to this new generation. Star Wars: The Force Awakens, $2 billion movie. I think it's still like the 6th highest grossing movie of all time at this point.
Sheesh.
It's the highest grossing movie domestically in the United States of all time, a record that's probably not going to be broken for quite a while. It was just a tremendous success. And so it certainly can't be ignored that it did what it needed to do to get that excitement back. But also just thinking about it from a story perspective, that's kind of what we're focusing on today. Let's kick it off with you, man. What do you want to say about The Force Awakens, and ultimately what grade did you give it?
Yeah, man, Force Awakens. It was just a time. Again, I remember just being so excited as a Star Wars fan. Like you said, we grew up with that prequel trilogy. And in that time, you're able to go back, watch those a lot, watch the original trilogy a lot, kind of just sit on the Star Wars that Other than that, I'm going off of video games. And so when I first see the Force Awakens trailer and you hear about Rey and you're like, whoa, we got a female protagonist. Like, oh, it was a big deal to me. And I was really excited for it. And of course the hype is through the roof. How could you possibly reach the hype of the Force Awakens? It's like, it's almost impossible. But I think for a first outing, I had a good time. It was a really good movie. I like the characters we introduced. Even our small side characters. Like, I like BB-8 as a droid. I think he's really cool. I still want a BB-8 droid in my house. But I think they did a good job kind of gathering the some of that feeling of Star Wars of like, what are we doing here? Who was this character? Where are we going? This world is interesting. And Force Awakens also did a thing that you could take some points away from it, but it did take a lot of the DNA from A New Hope. It was like, oh, it's A New Hope in 2015. It was like, yeah, those are fair criticisms, but I think they did a good job of recreating some of those feelings. So my grade, I gave it a B plus, man. I gave it a B plus.
B plus for The Force Awakens. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair score. So The Force Awakens, it's an interesting movie to think about, obviously, in the context of where things stand now, and things have changed quite drastically. Ultimately, the grade that I'm going to give The Force Awakens is a B minus. I'm going to give it a B minus. I won't reiterate a lot of what you said because I think it is all true. And the biggest thing that The Force Awakens needed to do, it achieved it. And that was getting people excited again about the franchise and getting everybody back on board for that initial film. B minus for me ultimately is the fact that it is a Control-C, Control-V of the original Star Wars movie. Yeah. That's just something that won't age that well. Once you get past the hype and the excitement of what we got and you look at the movie, J.J. Abrams, what did he do with it, really? What did he bring to the table? And I think about George Lucas's reaction to the movie. I read Bob Iger's book a few years ago, and he talked about George Lucas seeing the movie, and at the end of the movie, he said, well, there's nothing new. There's nothing new here. And that's, I think, 1,000% true. And I think it's largely indicative of a lot of current modern day Star Wars and the fact that it didn't really introduce anything new besides like a couple of characters. But it's largely a rehash of a movie, that obviously set the world on fire in 1977. But for that, it's a B minus. So it's fine in the context of which it exists in and how it had to get people back on board. But as a film and how it stands the test of time, it's okay. It's fine. It did what it needed to do. Moving on, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, came out the following year, that following December, made $1 billion. I think to some people's surprise, this is obviously a prequel story that tells the sort of origins of the Death Star and how the creation of the Death Star really led to the events of the original Star Wars. And it includes a iconic end sequence that if I graded that on its own, that's an A++. Like that sequence is phenomenal with Darth Vader and what we did. We never saw him in that context. It was really, really magnificent. I remember seeing that on the big screen. In fact, that was the first movie that I saw in the Lincoln Square IMAX, very first movie that I saw at that theater, and it was pretty life changing. But for all that said, I'm gonna give it a B- on this one as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think in hindsight, looking at the movie, it's an okay movie. It doesn't age as well
Mm-hmm.
for me either. Just moving over the course of like the past 7 or 8 years since it's come out, a
Yeah.
lot of it's really slow. It's a really, really
Mm-hmm.
slow film until things kind of pick up with the final act. It's a tremendous final act. And if we're to believe, the reports out there, I think we can probably credit Tony Gilroy for a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Gareth Edwards, not my favorite filmmaker, not my favorite visionary at this point.
Yeah.
He did okay, but I look at the movie as it's fine, with a really, really amazing final act that just has, I think, every ounce of excitement that you can want out of a film of that
Mm-hmm.
nature, and just some of the risk it took with the characters. But in totality, it was fine. It was cool.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I think if you would have asked me after watching it, I'm like, is that an A movie I just watched? But I think over as the years went on, it kind of slowed down for me a little bit. I agree. Those first couple acts, they're good, but they're just not the momentum isn't as high throughout the entire thing that I thought it was. But yeah, I won't reiterate too much what you said. I pretty much agree across the board. It was cool seeing Donnie Yen get a crack at the thing, and honestly, without Rogue One, we probably wouldn't have Andor. So I do give it a little bit of points for that and for being different. You tell me a Star Wars movie we are actively pretty much telling people there are no Jedis in this movie made $1 billion. I think that's impressive. Like, good job, y'all. They really did their damn thing. But my grade here is just a B. I give it a B.
Be a solid. Moving on. Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Uh-oh.
How do we even
Uh-oh.
begin to address this one? So I think it's no exaggeration to say that this is the most controversial release under the Disney era. Still talked about. It's kind of shaped the modern context and conversation around Star Wars fandom. And
Yeah.
Rian Johnson came in and tried to do something radically different with the themes and the ideas of the movie and the characters, and just really taking it in a new direction. And for some people it really worked, and it was still a successful movie. It made $1.3 billion at the box office, albeit dropped off 700 million from that 2 billion that they made with the first one. That is
My God.
that's a lot of money. I mean, it made 1.3, but yeah, that's a big drop off. But now I think in this day and age, I don't even know how to talk about this movie anymore. It's kind of become lost to the fandom and to the ether at this point. So yeah, man, how do you grade this one, The Last Jedi?
Yeah, like you said, what a behemoth I think of a movie. And what's crazy is there were a couple things that raised my eyebrows when I first seen it, but what's so interesting is I did not register that the fandom was going to feel the way they did about this movie.
I don't think
until,
anybody did.
until later. I was like, not until you leave the theater, it was like, oh, y'all serious about this thing. But overall, man, I like The Last Jedi. I think it's pretty decent. There are things about it that I don't like, particularly there's a couple sequences that are just like, wow, did this have to be here? But I think Rian Johnson was doing a lot of interesting things with the Force, with Luke. Again, a lot of people don't like that stuff, but with the Force, with Luke, with Rey, and oh my God, what am I blanking?
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren, with Rey and Kylo Ren's relationship. That was like, that's different, and like that's kind of cool, or a different way to look at this thing. Also, The Last Jedi has a firefight sequence in it that I'm like, did y'all watch the same sequence I watched? That was pretty cool. I think it's a little overrated in post, but it was pretty cool to see, man. And I think one of the biggest detriments of this entire sequel trilogy is honestly the whatever the hell they did to Snoke. Like, Snoke was just like, what? Where do we go with Snoke? Like, what is happening?
Clearly no vision with that character.
Clearly no vision. It felt like one of those things where I talk about this, and I think how Game of Thrones ended, how Benioff and Weiss kind of ended things. The internet will go through several iterations of what they think could be a good theory of something that could happen. And it's almost like the writers are reading it and they're like, it can't be that. It's like, it's okay if it's that thing sometimes. Like, let it be that thing. I bet you probably would have got a better reaction out of it being one person being right on the internet than nobody being right at all. You know what I'm saying? And I think a little bit of The Last Jedi and really this whole sequel trilogy suffer from that. But overall, I think Last Jedi is pretty solid, man. I also give this movie a B.
B. Okay, that is
Yeah, I
solid.
know.
So Last Jedi, yeah, it's hard to talk about this movie for me at this point because my feelings have they've morphed and evolved, to be honest. Like when I first saw The Last Jedi in theaters and I went to a
Mhm.
late fucking showing. Oh my god, it was ungodly 2 a.m. in the morning. I'll never
Oh,
forget
now,
it.
oh Lord.
I didn't get out of that damn theater until like 5 in the morning because it's a 2.5 hour movie. But everything else is sold out. Be that as it may. I remember watching it and feeling genuinely excited about what I had just witnessed because it did feel different and unlike anything else. It felt like it had taken some risks and was going to push the whole franchise into a new direction. It lands, everybody reacts the way that they do. I mean, I remember, I'll never forget it. I went to go, a few months later after it comes out, I went to go get the 4K from Best Buy. I go and
Mhm.
pick it up off the shelf. This is when we were still buying things in person, by the way. I go and
Right.
pick it up off the shelf, take it over to the attendee. If you ever been to Best Buy enough, you know that they'll have just like somebody roaming who could check you out pretty quickly. They don't even need like a
Mhm.
register. And I hand it to him and he's like, "Oh, I hate this fucking movie. This piece of shit. They fucking ruined Star Wars. Ryan Johnson, I'll never forgive him." And I was just like, "Whoa, buddy. Whoa. I wasn't ready for this conversation. I didn't know I was gonna have to go there, and I have to tell him like, oh, I thought it was good. I liked that. I like what he did with this. I like what he, and he just,
Mhm.
we had a full blown conversation for about 10 minutes there about just like where the franchise was, and I was just like, okay, this is really a thing. It's a living, breathing
Mhm.
conversation that's happening, and so, I say all that to say that I truly, really don't even know how to feel about this movie anymore.
It's very hard.
I
I
don't know
agree.
how to. Like when I watched it recently. I think it was
Mhm.
probably 3 years ago at this point. I
Mhm.
watched it and I had a real feeling of, damn, do I like this movie? Do I
Yeah.
like? You start to hear so many things so often. It's like, oh damn, that does kind of
Mhm.
stick out. Oh, that doesn't work as well as I thought that it did
Yeah.
initially. Granted, there are some things that I unequivocally still enjoy about the movie, certainly, but I do look at it now in this really complicated light that we have, and I can't. I almost can't judge it on its own merits just for the life
Mhm.
that it's taken within just the meaning of where we are right now. I think it's really kind of the nexus point of like this modern day of Star Wars, all the
Mhm.
good and all the bad at the same time. Everything that encapsulates this whole conversation that we've been having about Lucasfilm and the direction of the franchise. So I'll stop rambling. I'm gonna give it a C. I have to give it a C at this point because
That's fair.
I don't even know what place it has in the franchise anymore. I don't know if we're going to be talking about it still in 10, 15 years. I don't know if it's going to resonate with fans. I don't know if it's going to have that nostalgic pull like the prequels do.
Mhm.
The jury's kind of out on that. It's going to take like a good decade to be far removed from it. But at
Yeah.
this point, it's just so complicated for me to look at that I just got to give it a C at this day and age. Moving on, Solo: A Star Wars Story. This one didn't go so well for them. This is
It didn't.
easily their lowest grossing film that they've put out. It made 393 million at the worldwide box office on a budget of 330 million dollars.
My
Pretty
God.
much a huge massive bomb. It tried to recast one of the most beloved characters in cinematic history and give us a young version with Alden Ehrenreich. And I like Alden Ehrenreich. I liked a lot of the
Yeah.
cast and part of this movie. In fact, I thought the story was okay. It was
Mhm.
fine, but did it need to happen is kind of the big question that I think a lot of people ask. Like,
Mm.
did we really fucking need this movie? Because I mean, Harrison Ford just casts a shadow over all of this. It's
Yeah.
Harrison Ford. By the way, did you see that he was riding the subway? Did you see that video? Like he was
I
just,
didn't. What?
dude, somebody caught a video of him just riding the one train, just like randomly on the one train, sitting there like a regular civilian,
Like a
just
regular
had
person?
slacks on, a button up. He's just waiting. I'm pretty sure he was at
Ain't
96th
no
Street.
way.
I'm almost
Ain't no
positive
way.
he was just waiting at 96th Street. He gets on the train, he sits down, and then finally some people start to talk to him, and it looks like he's having, a pleasant time. It doesn't look
An
like they're
okay
bothering
time?
him, but it was like
Hmm.
Harrison Ford. If I saw Harrison Ford on the subway, I don't know
Yeah.
what I would do.
I don't know either.
It would be
Indiana Jones on the subway, Han Solo on the
pretty
subway.
crazy. I've seen a
Uh,
lot of celebrities, and most of them don't
Yeah,
phase me. But he would
he's one of them.
I'd
Yeah,
be
he's one
phased,
of them.
be completely phased. But all that said, Solo: A Star Wars Story. This is another complicated one. I do like the movie.
Hmm.
I think it's decent. It's better than what people give it credit for, but I still got to give it a C plus, just because
Yep.
I look back at it and I'm just like, I don't know if we really needed this movie. I don't know if it adds anything to the lore. Obviously, of the stories that have been told about the character, we just kind of see them play out on the big screen. It's almost as if they took Wikipedia entries or Wikipedia entries and said like, well, what if we turn that into a movie? it's
Yeah.
probably not the greatest premise to make a movie, if we're being honest. So C plus it gets from me.
Yeah, man. I'm with you. I do like the movie. It's like, but did it have to be made? And that is just such a big question that looms over the film. But the cast is fire. I mean, it's just really we get Where the Harrelson, Tandy Newton, John Favreau's in it. There should be a study about wasting Amelia Clark as an actress. I don't know what is happening, but
Mm.
it's like every time she shows up, she's wasted or shouldn't be there
Is
half
it
the time.
is it wasted
Sometimes it's
though?
wasted.
Is it
Sometimes
wait?
it's wasted.
I'm
Or like
starting to wonder. Um, is she all that good? I'm just gonna say
maybe it's
it.
her.
Is she really all that good?
It could, but
Because she's
it's
not.
it's
She's terrible in Terminator. I don't know if you saw. What was it?
oh
Genesis,
yeah. Yeah.
Genesis.
I forgot all about that joint. Yeah.
Train wreck
Uh-huh.
performance. It was really bad, but
I
yeah. I
forgot
mean,
about
to be
that
fair,
joint.
you're probably right.
Yeah,
Some
it's just
wasting.
one of those things where it's like it always seems like we can't really see her performance because everything around it is just like, what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is this thing? And so yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. But I thought Kira, as an idea, was a decent character. But yeah, man, it is a decent movie. Did it have to be made? Probably not, but it got made anyway, and it's an okay watch. Like if this movie came on TV and you had never seen it, I feel like a person would have a good time with it. Like, oh, that was cool. And they don't even have to be in the Star Wars. They'd be like, oh, that was decent. But I'm actually right with you. I gave it a C plus.
C plus it gets from the both of us. Okay. And if you're following along, just to reiterate some of these scores, a C plus, it's about a 2.3 on the GPA scale, which if you got C plus in school when you were younger, your parents probably weren't all that happy. They'd probably be like, "What happened here? This could have been worse, but what's going on here?" Moving
Mhm.
on, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, the concluding movie of the sequel trilogy. This is, I think, the moment where everybody the red flags went off. It was just like, oh, okay, we're in really bad shape right now. Like the Last Jedi, the jury's out on that. You love it, you
Mhm.
hate it. People fall in between. That happens. But I think the Rise of Skywalker, unilaterally, mostly a disappointment for a lot of people. Probably the quietest $1 billion that was made at the box office. I mean, this made
Yeah.
no noise when it came out because we can't forget it came out in probably the most stacked year in cinematic history when it comes to money earned at the box office, the year of Avengers Endgame and Captain Marvel and Joker and all these really, really successful movies from Disney at that. And Rise of Skywalker comes out and it's a dud. It's just an absolute dud. And I think a lot of people really look back on it with a lot of disdain. So yeah. What do you think about the Rise of Skywalker? What grade did you give it?
Oh man, this movie here. Very simply, I do not like this movie. It honestly it, it was one of the least I was excited. I'm always excited to watch Star Wars, but I've almost never been less excited to rewatch a Star Wars movie as much as The Rise of Skywalker. Like I think about all of the theatrical movies we get, and this is one I'm at least favorite. I'm at least excited to watch every time. Like I'm watching Phantom Menace way before I'm turning on The Rise of Skywalker. Like I just can't. Oh my god, it's this movie really felt like again J.J. Abrams. He was like, "How do we make Star Wars Endgame?" And I'm like, "Did we have to do this? Did we have to put our characters in peril so everybody in the galaxy can come save them at the end? Is that all we're doing with this entire thing?" And I know a lot of people. The thing is about The Last Jedi. There's a lot of people like in my head. I always think, okay, what if J.J. Abrams had made that movie? Would I feel different? Probably not. If this is what you were going for, I'm sure you probably made a couple pivots, but if this is what you were going for, I'm still not here for it, bro. It just it does so many things wrong. But the Palpatine of it all, it just pisses me off and sends me down a spiral that I don't even really want to talk about. To be honest, man, I'm just like y'all cannot be serious because last soapbox when it comes to this movie, I think Rey had potential to be really cool on her own, Like you don't, I understand the thing they were trying to do. Like yeah, she has like this Skywalker mentorship with Leia and Luke, and it's like okay, cool. But then you turn her into a Palpatine. I'm just whatever, bro. If y'all say so. I just not my favorite movie at all. But overall, it is movie a D minus.
D
Do not like
minus.
it.
D minus. That's pretty stiff. Pretty stiff grade there. Yeah, I don't have a ton to say about the Rise of Skywalker. I mean, the movie sucks. It's just a bad movie. That's all I'm really gonna say about it. It's a bad movie. It's a bad conclusion. It's almost what nobody wanted. It does very little well. I think the one thing it does well, it has some great visual effects. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's about it.
Looks fine.
But
Yeah, it looks
it looks
decent.
fine. It looks like what a $300 million movie probably should look like. But that is it's not how I grade films. And so yeah, I'm gonna give it a D. I won't go D minus, but I'm gonna give it a D. It's just it's mostly a failure. It's just probably the nadir of
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars fandom at this point, because it just really it sucks when you conclude out a 9-film story in that way. It
Yeah.
wasn't wrapping up 3 movies. It wasn't wrapping up 6 movies. Like, guys, we're wrapping up 40 fucking years here, and
Yep.
we shat the bed. So
That's what we came up with.
that's the legacy that the Rise of Skywalker will forever, unfortunately, have. Moving on, we gotten past the movies now. I think that takes up a lot of the conversation. We're moving into the streaming era, which is where
Yep.
Star Wars has only occupied for the past 6 years. It's only been on streaming. It's the only way you can watch any new Star Wars, but it started off with a bang. The Mandalorian season 1 pretty much launched Disney Plus in November of 2019, came out with really high momentum, a lot of excitement just to see like what Star Wars was going to look like on the small screen and what stories we could tell and where we could ultimately go with these characters. And I think for the Mandalorian season 1, that's a season that a season of TV that I really liked. Had a slow start, and I was wondering like, what are we doing here? Like, what's the point of this? By the middle of it, you kind of get like what's going on there, and it leaves you yearning for more. I think it's a really, really solid opening to just the potential of what we ultimately saw the Mandalorian become, in the next season after that. So I give season 1 a B. I give it a B for what they were able to achieve there. Really solid TV series, showcasing what's capable on streaming, taking those big budgets and putting it, into long form storytelling and giving us some characters that we really liked and that we gravitated towards. And so I thought it was a solid first season. I'm gonna give it a B.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty with you across the board here. I also gave this a B, and yeah, but just really cool. I think to see something not just new in Star Wars, but different. And up until this point, Mandalorians in general have been such a like, what it is, but we kind of don't know what it is. Like, we've seen Jango and Boba Fett around, but like now you're telling us that they're not actual Mandalorians. So what is the Mandalorian? It was really interesting and really cool, I think, to see that for the first time and see what that could be, and honestly play with that mythos, because I think it was another direction here. This could have went very bad, but I think they did a good job of taking care of it, and yeah, coming out with some new characters in the beginning that we like. Grogu broke the world. You know what I'm saying? So I was pretty happy with it.
And they
So
weren't
that's why I
ready
give it a B.
for it because there was no Grogu merch available in season 1. They had it
Yeah.
all. It was ready for season 2. They were not going to make that same mistake again. But season 1, I'm like, what the like? Where's the Baby Yoda? We didn't even know his name at
Right.
that point. Like,
Yeah,
where's
it
the
was
Baby
Baby
Yoda
Yoda.
stuff? But yeah, no, it was a solid opening. Moving on. Clone Wars season 7, which was the final season. Now, people had called for this for years because Clone Wars prematurely ended. It was a story that had been running prior to Disney and the purchase of Lucasfilm, and they actually canceled the show because it didn't fit in with the vision of what they were trying to do with Star Wars at that particular point. In fact, they kind of nixed all the expanded universe stuff and redubbed it Star Wars Legends. Like, hey guys, yeah, those books that came out, we know you read them, we know you love them, but we're not going to be taking a lot of that stuff. We might pull here and there, but it's mostly irrelevant because we're telling our own stories. However, Clone Wars, it has such a legacy and so much of a fan base that petitions and people just rallying behind the show to have a really meaningful conclusion, they kind of willed it into existence. And we got the final season, season 7 in 2020. They were able to finally wrap up the story after being off of the air for, I think, like 7 years at that point. It previously was on Cartoon Network, and then the 7th and final season debuted on Disney Plus when it came out in 2020. And so we got the last batch of episodes, wrapping up really the story of Ahsoka and Anakin, of course, and his transition to Vader. What do you want to say about Clone Wars, and what grade did you give it?
Man, Clone Wars season 7. I'm a big Ahsoka fan, of course, particularly coming from Clone Wars, which gave Ahsoka so much, and what a cool character to develop over a long period of time. Shout out to Dave Filoni, man. But Clone Wars season 7 in particular was just like the last 4 episodes in particular. I think almost like you could watch them like movies if you really wanted to, and it made it so epic and so cool, and it was a really good conclusion to I think what a lot of fans were hoping for, me included. I was like, yeah, that was lovely. That's exactly how that was supposed to go down. So I absolutely loved it. I gave Clone Wars season 7 an A. Man, I thought they did a really good job on finishing that thing across the board. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I think it deserves an A.
Yeah, Clone Wars, it's one of the more celebrated stories I think that we've gotten in the 21st century of Star Wars. It's one of those things that people kind of underestimated it, but then when you
Mm-hmm.
actually watch it and you dive in, it's like, oh wait a second, there's a lot here. There's so much, and that's what the show always was. Clone Wars season 7 was super excited about it, and I think everything you said is true. Those last 4 episodes are what stands head and shoulders above a lot of the other stuff they put out. If I was to judge those episodes on their own, that would get an A by itself, just because of that. But like the rest of the Clone Wars, the entire series, there's episodes
Yeah.
that don't really matter all that much. Where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't
Oh,
as
filler.
interesting. It's some filler stuff. They colorize them. That the yellow episodes are kind of the main through line adventures. The blue episodes are the really disposable episodes that kind of don't matter at all.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you get the batch of the red episodes, shit's going down.
So you better watch
Like,
this.
oh, it's going crazy. So you have to watch those red episodes when they drop. So thinking about the whole season in totality, I'm giving it a B.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if I were to judge like the last 4 episodes by themselves, if I could do that and just like separate it, that would get an A easily, because there was almost no better way you can conclude that story, wrap up Ahsoka's story, her relationship with Anakin, obviously, just seeing how it affected her. And it's sad. It's a downer. I think that's one of the things that worked really well for that show overall, is just the fact that like they got dark. They got really real a lot. They didn't pull
It
punches, and
did.
they leaned into the darkness of where the story was transitioning to at that time. So I enjoy Clone Wars season 7. The whole show is just like really, really a special place in the entire Star Wars canon. Moving on, Mandalorian season 2 came out really quickly after the first season. They had it ready to go, dropped in 2020. This season is definitely better than season 1 for me. I know we talked about it a lot on the podcast. It was
Mm-hmm.
great, because that was in the throes of COVID. There was not much coming out, but the Mandalorian season 2 was able to up the ante, up the stakes, and really show you how this is all connected in with other characters. Brought in Ahsoka for the first time in live action, portrayed by
Mm-hmm.
Rosario Dawson. That episode was just
Yeah.
amazing. Just a lot of really, really good stuff, a lot of great action. Grogu pissed me off a lot. I was very bothered by some of the stuff he was doing. I'm like, this is
Uh-huh.
really irking me and irritating me. But again, really, really solid entry and follow up, and I think it plussed everything that they did in season 1. I'm gonna give it a B plus.
Yeah. Right here with you again. I also gave it a B plus. It was again, season 1 was like, okay, this is what this thing is. We're at a Western, we're just on adventures. And season 2 was like, we're going to add to Mandalorian lore. Here's some cool things about Mandalorians you didn't know. Here's what Din Djarin, which his name is, which we learned that he's going through. And I think by the end of it, season 2 just does end up being better episode by episode. Forget Oliphant's in that season, and the Easter eggs are really cool. And yeah, I just feel like they kind of found a footing, and understood where to go after season 1 success. It was like, okay, like you said, let's plus it and kind of add some things to make it a little bit better. And I think they did overall.
Certainly. Moving on, Star Wars Visions, the first season. This was a brand new experiment, basically adapting the Star Wars story to fit within anime form. They worked with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of international studios, a lot of anime studios all across the world to make Star Wars Visions season 1, which was this anthology series that was going to tell standalone, isolated stories, largely unconnected from main timeline, main canon stuff. In fact, I think that they said like some of these things aren't officially in canon. They kind of happen in isolation.
Mm.
You can just kind of enjoy them on their own merits. And it was a breath of fresh air when it came out. I do really remember just like having a good time that they were going to lean into this, because I was just a big fan of the Animatrix, just like that idea of just taking a
Yeah.
universe, a popular IP, and just like making it an anime and just telling like unique stories with different artists and different studios. So when they did this and that first trailer dropped, I was super excited. What did you ultimately grade Star Wars Vision 1?
Yeah, man. I honestly, I gave this a lot of points for being something they hadn't done before. It's like, dang, why haven't we been doing this forever? This is really dope. This is really cool. Plus, I like a lot of the episodes from 1. Not all of them. Some of them are like, why are we here? Tatooine Rhapsody in particular, like, what are we doing here? But I found myself blocking like the dual Village Bride, Ninth Jedi, Twins. A lot of those visuals and episodes are things that are going to stick with me for a little bit, and I think that's important to know. Lop and Ocho was like, who's this bunny Jedi chick? You know what I'm saying? So I actually end up giving Visions 1 a B plus, and that's not, I think individually, of course, a lot of the gradings would be different, but overall, again, as a taking a limb out, doing something different, and a lot of those episodes being really cool, I gave it a B plus.
No, I think that's a good score. I'm not far off. I gave it a B. Again, just something different, something new, something fresh and unique, and needed. I think we need those different types of projects, occasionally to
Yeah.
just like remind us of this is a big, large, massive universe. We don't have to confine ourselves to just one type of storytelling. Let's do multiple different things. And so I'm glad that it's a thing that they do, and they seem to be following up on it every few years or so. Moving on, next thing is the Book of Boba Fett. Now, this was a spinoff to The Mandalorian. Of course, they brought Boba Fett back in the show, but it was, way before The Mandalorian, one of the most popular Star Wars characters. And this was supposed to be a movie, but then it got refashioned to a TV series, sort of a standalone limited series, I suppose, at this point. And it came out, and we did briefly talk about it on the podcast, but again, not one of their greatest efforts by any stretch. I think a lot of people look back on this like, that was just a misfire. In fact, it was almost kind of a backdoor introduction to Mandalorian season 3. There was like that stretch of 2 or 3 episodes where Boba Fett was not even in his own show. It completely went over back to Din Djarin, which were the best episodes, but it was also like that's a crazy usage of this character that we've been waiting to see. So just not a great outing at all. Just some really, really questionable decision making. Book of Boba Fett is not something that I think I'll ever revisit. I haven't touched it since it came out. I can't see myself rewatching it for any reason. It's just not a good show, so I give it a D. It just didn't work, and I think even the premise of it, like the idea of him being, sort of the ruler over this criminal underworld within the Star Wars universe, that whole idea of him being like a kingpin. They didn't even deliver upon that. That was something that I was really excited about within the context of the show, and it just kind of fell by the wayside. I was pretty let down by it.
Yeah, the potential for this thing was so high that I think I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but bro, my PSP, I used to have like this little Boba Fett keychain, like on my PSP. Like Boba Fett was a really cool character, to that point, part of it was because we didn't know a lot about him. We was like, who is this dude? Where did he come from? And when you get the opportunity to flesh something like that out, somebody who people think is cool because you don't know a lot about him, you better do a damn good job. And that idea, like you said, of him being a kingpin, is like, oh shoot, let's do it. That feels like some things he could do. Man, he spent the season in board meetings and in the back of trucks and walking around, and I'm like, what are we doing here? There was like an episode I remember liking, but it was just like, when you like one episode out of what, 6, 8, what does that mean? Like, what is, you know what I'm saying? What are we doing here? So I gave Book of Boba Fett a D plus just because. But man, what a disappointing show. Again, had really a lot of potential, I think, with the character. But yeah, a couple of decent action sequences, but other than that, he just kind of fell by the wayside of like, what are we doing here? And by the end, you're asking yourself a question that this had to get made. It's like, unfortunately, you're not as cool as Din Djarin is now. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we thought Boba Fett was like this cool dude. Now I'm like, shoot, give me Mando back. What is this? So yeah, it was pretty disappointing.
I think that was the mistake. They kind of worked backwards. People had
Yeah.
been wanting Boba Fett for decades, ever since we saw him, prematurely die in Return of the Jedi, and people were like, "That's a really cool character. Give him a movie. Give him a movie. Give him a movie." And we finally get to a place where that's possible. But then Mandalorian comes along, and he's kind of doing all the stuff that Boba Fett should have been doing, but. Now there's really no space for that, so we have to make him different enough to justify the existence of his own show, but it just wasn't a good show. It was a real stain on what they were doing. The hits keep on coming. Next up is Obi-Wan Kenobi, another highly, highly, highly anticipated project and show, just considering Ewan McGregor became one of the most beloved aspects of the prequel trilogy. And people wanted to see a follow-up, see where he had been in that time between Revenge of the Sith and the original Star Wars movie. What was he doing? And the inevitable rematch and showdown of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. And they teased this initially at the Disney Investor Day in 2020, and that was one of the key selling points you'll get to see this rematch. You'll get to see them fight again. And we got the show. It was a limited series. Again, I just remember it wasn't all that great at all. We did review it, I think, pretty in depth. I think we talked about it each and every episode, and had a couple of high moments, a couple of high spots, but largely didn't work. But ultimately, what grade did you assign for Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Yeah, this show is interesting because thinking about it, this show actually had a lot of good performances. Like, of course, Ewan McGregor showed up. The short moments that Hayden Christensen was in it, he showed up. Moses Sumney comes in and does a good job as Reva. And what they tried to work off this whole relationship between Obi-Wan and young Leia thing. I was like, okay, I kind of see the ideas of what we're going for here, but man, I remember part of it just being like, why is all of this unfolding on this soundstage once again? Like, why does this look like this? There are a couple good moments with some really cool, scary Darth Vader moments I really like. But overall, I ended up giving this just like a C. Like, it is. There are moments I like about it, and there are other moments that are like, whoa, this could have been better. Like, I understand what you were going for, but you just kind of missed. So yeah, man, I like I do kind of like some of the attempt at what they were doing with Obi-Wan. It's just some of that stuff fell by the wayside. Unfortunately, it ended up not being as good. But again, some good ideas, some really cool moments, and some really good performances actually.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy watching the show. I'm gonna give it a C minus. It was just a drag to get through for a lot of it. I was just like, it reached a certain point where you just realize like it's not gonna get better. I hated the stuff with him and young Leia like that. I hated that. That was just like a ridiculous usage of the character to me. The Leia character in particular. The only stuff I really do like is the Vader stuff. Like seeing him drag him through the fire was that was some ball shit. That was dope.
That was cool.
The whole ship sequence where
the
like
flicker, fire, flickers fire.
That was some good stuff, but again, like that's not a good show. So I didn't enjoy it that much. And they're talking about it. I mean, Ewan McGregor's calling for like a follow up. He's saying like he would want to do it, but at this point, I think just let it be. Like I just want to remember Ewan in the best light possible as it relates to the character. And
don't mess it up, brother.
He's always going to be good, but at the same time, if you continue to step back up and try to take on this character, and then if it doesn't live up to the legacy, then I'm just like I don't know. So. Moving on, Tales of the Jedi. This was a little bit different because this was connected to the Clone Wars, but it was also separate. This is also like an anthology series, animated series that they started to do in 2022. There have been a couple of follow-up Tales of the Empire we'll get to, and they're going to drop Tales of the Underworld this year. But this is telling, somewhat adjacently related stories to the characters of the Clone Wars. And so Tales of the Jedi specifically focused on Ahsoka, but then also Count Dooku. We got a lot of Count Dooku stuff that we had never saw before, and those are like my favorite aspects of Tales of the Jedi because you got a lot of like human stuff about Count Dooku that Christopher Lee just never got the opportunity to do in the movies because Attack of the Clones is just not good, and so he had to work with some really hokey shit. But Tales of the Jedi gave that character, the Count Dooku character, because he used to be a Jedi. That's the interesting thing. He used to be a Jedi that transitioned to the dark side of the Force and became a Sith, which is always just like interesting to examine. So it was good. It was solid. I liked it. It was like the same style of the Clone Wars. It kind of followed up that whole aesthetic and did, things very similarly to that. It felt like it was in the same family. So I'm gonna give it a B. And I think it was like a really, really solid addition again to like different things that they were doing, telling stories, not so much in a fashion in which we have to follow along for 7-8 seasons. We can just kind of watch this in one go and be done with it. But for those little short stories, those 15-20 minute little installments, most of them were interesting. Not all of them hit, but most of them were pretty interesting to me. So I liked it.
Yeah, it Tales of the Jedi was like answering questions that I didn't even know I wanted the answer to. And I think that's good bridge gapping, if that makes any sense. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh shoot, that does make a lot of sense, or oh, that's where that comes from. But yeah, bro, Count Dooku was really cool. The inclusion of Yaddle I thought was pretty decent. We got some things from her, which is funny because a lot of people joke like, why does she talk normal? Like, why does Yaddle talk normal and Yoda is like talking all kind of whatever, man? I think that's so funny. But yeah, I really enjoyed Tales of the Jedi. I think they did a good job, and I also gave it a B.
Sounds good. Next one, another live action show, Andor season 1, which I have said numerous times, best Star Wars we've gotten since the 80s. I don't think it's close at this point for me personally. And I'm so excited for season 2 that's about to come out. I'm rewatching season 1 as we speak, and it's just as joyful and amazing as I remember originally watching it. But it was just such a bold mature adult take on stuff
Mm-hmm.
that we had seen and we speculated about, but we hadn't really seen executed on this level, such a high
Mm-hmm.
level at this type of scale with all these characters, all these stories, and ultimately the influence that it has really on the events that are going to happen within Rogue One and then of course the original Star Wars. And so I'm a big fan of Andor season one, made no bones about it. And we talked a lot about it on the show a few years ago when they were dropping those episodes. And so yeah, what letter grade did you assign for the first season of Andor?
Man, it's funny because when you watch Andor and you think about it, it's almost like Tony Gilroy was like, "How can I make the most non-Disney Plus Star Wars show that I can make?" He was like, "How can I do the opposite of everything else that's going on here?" And something I've been learning that I like over time is when properties can grow up with its fans. Like I talk about that with Fiona and Kate coming off of Adventure Time. It's way more mature than Adventure Time was. Adventure Time wasn't just like some super kiddie show, but Fiona and Cake is like, oh, how do we tell a story for our fans who used to be younger who are older now? And part of me feels like Andor is a little bit of that. Like, what do we give the fans who are older? All Star Wars doesn't have to be like this huge family oriented thing. How do we get more mature? And like you said, everything, bro. The following Cassie Andor and this story and all these characters just something so different. And this could just be the still high that I am off of this show, but I definitely gave it an A+. I just like it that much. It's just like, y'all, this is how you do something different, refreshing. It's shot well. The camera work is fire. The performances are going crazy. I'm being surprised. There's cameo characters in it that I wasn't expecting, not from Star Wars, but just actors like, whoa, how'd you get here? It's really good, man. I really enjoy it. It could go down over time, I don't know, but right now, again, it's still an A+ for me. It's prime television.
Yeah, certainly. It was one of my favorite of 2022. I'm giving Andor an A. Just love the show, love everything about it for the most part. And yeah, just super excited for season two when it drops, the last season of it. Moving on, The Mandalorian season three. This was some time in between season two and season three, about a 3-year gap. So we had to wait substantially longer than between season one and season two. So the anticipation had only built and mounted even more because The Mandalorian really became, I think, one of the more popular shows on
Mm-hmm.
Disney Plus. Unfortunately, season three is the weakest of the seasons of The Mandalorian. We reviewed every episode when they dropped. Not bad. Couple of good things here and there. Some exploration further of just the whole mythology behind Mandalore and their clans and their different factions, and they really spotlighted Bo-Katan quite a bit, which I
Mm-hmm.
thought was fine, but I think for me a pretty significant step down from what they had previously done with the first two seasons, and so ultimately I give it a C-.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happens with this property after the Mandalorian and Grogu. I don't know if that's like the end of it all or if we revert back to TV and continue on. I'm just not sure. And this
Mm-hmm.
show, this season in particular, didn't give me a ton of faith going into the movie. I'm like, you guys are kind of working from behind now as opposed to the first two seasons. So it was a big step down. Again, a few highlights here and there, but not something that I actively enjoy watching when it was dropping each week that year.
Yeah, I remember being every week. It was just like, oh, that's okay. Oh, that's okay too. Oh, this episode is okay, but overall, just ends up being regular and okay. And I think in the most normal form and just less interesting, to be honest, to put it as basic as possible. So I actually ended up giving it a C. Just it was just like, oh, it's watchable, but I'm not as interested. I remember the season 1 and 2. I was like, man, I can't wait to watch the episode of Mandalorian. What's going to happen? This season was just like, oh, I see what y'all doing, but it's just a little less interesting. And I think that happens, but it is what it is.
That was the thing. It did not have that excitement level behind it. Those first two seasons, when a new episode of The Mandalorian dropped, I felt like I had to watch them when they dropped.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was rushing to the TV to see the new installment. Never felt that way with season three,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Moving on to Ahsoka. This was a show that we actually did not talk about on the show really at all. We were off for a little bit when the show was airing, but highly anticipated,
Mm-hmm.
beloved character who grew to be beloved. People forget about this. folks did not love Ahsoka when she first
In the
debuted. Like
beginning. Yep.
she was actively hated by a large amount of the
Mm-hmm.
fan base, but then over time it was like, oh fuck, they're writing this character really, really good. This is actually a very, very nuanced character, a lot of emotion, a lot of depth to her. Grew to become a beloved fan favorite,
Mm-hmm.
and Rosario Dawson stepped into the role, had been fan casted for years, and stepped into the role for this live action show, which is kind of a spiritual follow up to Star Wars Rebels, another very well received show that dropped in the mid 2010s. And so Ahsoka came in to take on some of those loose threads, but then also again try to connect her existence and her character for audiences who might not have been exposed to Ahsoka during the Clone Wars or Rebels, and try to make sense of her character and the connection with Anakin and all of that stuff. So it had a lot to do.
Yeah.
I don't think it was necessarily successful in a lot of those things. But what do you want to say about Ahsoka, since we did not get a chance to talk about it, and what grade did you give it?
Yeah, Ahsoka was fine, man. It was one of those things that it did have a it was not it had a lot of big ideas. Like you said, it had a lot to do. People, and what's also interesting, a lot of people really didn't even know about Thrawn in general. So it's like, how do we get to understanding about Grand Admiral Thrawn? How does he even show up? A lot of people didn't even watch Rebels. It's like, how are we tying all these things together? And I think it did do something where it did move I guess they're calling it the Mandoverse a little bit forward, but it's called Ahsoka, and honestly, we honestly don't spend that much time with Ahsoka, like thinking about her thoughts, how she feels about all this, getting into where she is really, because it has to do all those other things that surround it. And so it ends up being pretty slow. And the interesting bits are interesting, but again, just a little bit too far and in between. So I end up giving Ahsoka a C plus. It's fine. It's very watchable. There are things I like about it, but man, it had a lot to do, and unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to get to Ahsoka herself.
Yeah. This was also, I think, similar to the Mandalorian season 3, where I just was not excited to watch it. I'm giving it a C minus.
Mm-hmm.
I really only liked the stuff in the middle when
Mm-hmm.
Anakin pops up. To be quite frank, to see Hayden Christensen back in live action again was a treat.
Yeah.
That was good stuff. Um, Outside of that, just the connections to Rebels, which that has its own baggage, and those side characters, those supporting characters, I'm just like, they're not that interesting to me. They just didn't work
Mm-hmm.
out that much for me. You do want to spend more time with Ahsoka, but she's doing so much to service a lot of the supporting characters in her own show, which I think was a mistake. I think that was a mistake. Even
Yeah.
though we had gotten a lot of time with Ahsoka, we saw a lot of her development in Tales of the Jedi and Clone Wars and even Rebels, but this was also the first time in live action, so it's still a little bit different, and there are
Mm-hmm.
still large chunks of the fan base who never watched any of those animated shows. So I think that this was a real opportunity to really propel her, and it didn't do a ton of that for me, unfortunately. So C minus is what I give it. Moving on, we're in the home stretch here. Star Wars Visions 2, follow up to Vision Season 1. I don't have a ton to say about this. I mean, everything from the first one kind of applies here. It
Mm-hmm.
was lesser than to me, so I'm giving it a
Mm-hmm.
C plus. It wasn't as good as the first edition. Didn't have as many of the individual stories that I liked, but still solid. Still glad that it exists. Still glad that we can do something different. But C plus is the grade that it gets from me.
I'm kind of with you, just lesser. I ended up giving it a B minus. It's just, it is what it is. That's how these anthologies by different studios work. You're gonna like more in one season. You're gonna like more than the other season. It happens in Black Mirror all the time. You know what I'm saying? You'll like one season more than you like the other. And so, yeah, I ended up giving a B minus. Definitely don't like it as much as that first slate of episodes.
Similar situation, Tales of the Empire, another follow up to Tales of the Jedi, but this time, as you can imagine, telling stories specifically about the Galactic Empire, the Sith, the bad guys in this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about this one? Does it match the first entry? Did it fall off a little bit? What grade was it for you?
Not as interesting at all as Tales of the Jedi, man. And it was honestly disappointing because we like to, I guess, view and get into the psyche of like all these villains and see how it how it pans out. How did they end up like this? But it's just not as good as Tales of the Jedi. And maybe the characters were a little less interesting that we were following. It's just not what I asked for, I guess. Not that I asked for Tales of the Jedi either, but it was answering questions that I was like, oh, I was interested. I didn't know I was interested in that. And then Empire seeks to do the same thing. Instead, I'm like, I don't think I was interested in that kind of thing. So it's a little lesser than, and I ended up giving it a C minus.
C minus. I gave it a B minus.
Mm-hmm.
Again, still solid, but just a fall off from the first season, which is, it's kind of weird because you would expect like the evil side of things to be even more compelling. The Count Dooku stuff from Tales of the Jedi, to see that transition was like the most juicy stuff, and I thought like we were going to get a lot more of that, but that was not the case in Tales of the Empire, so it wasn't as good. Um, last two live action shows from last year, both we reviewed. First up, The Acolyte. Um, again,
Ooh.
just a really just bad all around. Bad start, bad anticipation, bad reaction, justly and unjustly. I think for a lot of it got a lot of flack that it didn't necessarily deserve, but also like some of it did deserve. But there was just too much working against the Acolyte for it to really make a footprint in any of this stuff, and so much so that this is, I guess, technically the first show that's not getting a second season that was intended to have a second season. They clearly, if you watched it, at the end of it, they set up future stories that they're going to tell and connect it even to the original prequel trilogy, but they canceled it due to lower viewership, pretty bad ratings, just all around negative feedback, I think, from most fans. And so a lot of people just didn't gravitate towards this story that they were trying to tell, even though
Mm-hmm.
the premise was like interesting. We were going to go to a
Mm-hmm.
completely different time and era, which we had been calling for, we had been asking for, but not in this way. It's one of the lower points for me, D minus. It didn't work really in any regards. And I think I was just more upset by like the second or third episode at how bad it progressively got. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
knew there's not really any light at the end of this tunnel, and I watched all the episodes, and by the end of it, I felt exhausted because I was just like, we have shat the bed completely here. We're kind of at the bottom. I don't know if it can get any lower than this for me personally, and maybe for some other fans, but we got there, and that's always unfortunate.
Yeah, man, acolyte. There is one random episode I do like in the show. It's when they're in the jungle and it's like the stranger, and you're like, "Whoa, who is this dude?" And it's almost like Star Wars does this thing where sometimes it's like the more you know, the worse it gets. Sometimes there's really cool
That's
things
with
in the
anything, to be
unknown.
honest.
Yeah, that is with anything, but there's a lot of cool things in the unknown sometimes, and it's like, wow, now we know more, and I don't like it as much. And it's just so unfortunate because the stranger started off as a pretty cool character. What he was doing again in the jungle and what May Osha, whoever it was, whatever it was going through at the time. But overall, I gave it a D. It falls flat completely. But yeah, I give it a couple points because there was one random good episode in there. I was like, oh shoot, okay, maybe we're gonna pick it up, and then it never picks up. It hits it, and then it's just back down from there on out. It's like, wow, why couldn't we figure out how to make this thing interesting? Because there was something in there, but it's like they could never figure it out, man. It's too bad.
Too bad, so sad. Last but not least, Skeleton Crew, the most recent installment of Star Wars that we've gotten, new stories that we've gotten. Again, a show that we discussed here. We discussed the first few episodes at least. I think, look, Skeleton Crew, it was decent. It was enjoyable. People had positive things to say about it. They clearly
Mm-hmm.
had a vision and a tone that they set out to achieve on the show, and I think that they did a pretty good job with it. We didn't really, I think, talk and address the end of it. We only really talked about the beginning of it. So what
Yeah.
do you want to say about how it ultimately wrapped up, and what grade you assigned to it?
Oh man. It was such a it ended up becoming such a big adventure. The Skeleton Crew, but I did really like the characters. I like how we could follow this young group of kids and honestly just start to like them, like Wim and Neil, and it just I thought they were really cool and well made. And it was fun, to be honest, to see what was going to happen. Honestly, there was a couple surprises. Like, is this going to go good? Is this going to go bad? Is this person good? Is this person bad? I didn't know what was going to happen, but I think the ending is interesting because it's like, what does this mean for Adin in general? Like the galaxy now understands, reveals at Adin. and is no longer in isolation. It's almost like it reminded me of something else, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I lost it, but this had happened in another story where there was a secret place and everybody knew about it. It might be Wakanda, low key. And now all of a sudden everybody knows about it, and now it's going to be like, okay, now what happens? And so I don't know, man. I thought it ended fine. It was okay, but I still really like the show for what it was, and I appreciate the adventure we went on, man. So I ended up giving Skeleton Crew a B. I thought it was I liked watching it week to week. It was like something fun for me, something refreshing. Again, we get to hang out with some kids who shouldn't be where they are. They around all these pirates. Again, very simple premise, but I had a good time watching the episodes and was surprised even by the performances that the child actors gave too. I thought they did a pretty good job, man.
The kids were the best. They were really good, really well casted. Skeleton Crew, B- for me. Perfectly fine, perfectly suitable for what they were trying to do. I just don't think it matters. I think that's what like. I don't know if it matters all that much at this point, and where we are with Star Wars. Like, is Skeleton Crew making a dent in anything? I don't know. If Skeleton Crew was like one of the first projects that had come out, if it came out in 2020 or even 2021, it was one of the earlier Disney Plus series, I think I'd probably view it in a better light. But it gets to a certain point. Again, we touched upon it earlier. It gets increasingly difficult to look at these things in isolation. It all kind of becomes somewhat intrinsically linked to the larger vision, quote unquote, using that term loosely, that's at play, and how this all works and synchronizes together for what they're trying to tell us about the current state of Star Wars. And Skeleton Crew, while I did enjoy aspects of it, I just don't know if it's going to matter. And look, let's just be honest. We have seen many 21st century shows come and take that same aesthetic that was established and perfected in the 80s by those Amblin movies, by the same movies that Kathleen Kennedy produced and Steven Spielberg directed. We've seen numerous shows come and do that and take that same style and aesthetic and get us to lean into the nostalgia and think that it's like the greatest thing, when it's like, guys, they're just feeding us our childhood. That's what they're really doing here. Stranger Things did it. It did it. Like, everything is kind of doing it these days because they know that gets us in our feels, and we like that stuff. And I always look at that with a side eye, because it's like, you're fucking manipulating me, because you know that I have I have an affinity for this stuff. But is it really a good story, or are you just taking aspects of other good stories that previously have proven to work, put it in a blender, try to give it to me as if it's something new, but it's not really. And so I do look at Skeleton Crew somewhat in that light. But that's the last one. So now comes the average totals. I know mine. Do you know your score offhand? I did the calculations for mine.
I don't.
Okay, so while you do that really quickly, again, to do this, you add up all the numbers and then divide it by the total amount of projects, which is 19. And so my average total out of this is ultimately a 2.33 score, which equates to a C+, which I think is exactly right. I think it's exactly right for
that sounds accurate.
what we've gotten with Star Wars, where things are. It's almost kind of right down the middle, where it's like there's some things that have really, really worked out well, but then a lot of it is either average or, in many cases, very much below average. And so this whole output of what we've gotten over the past 10 plus years or so, just the projects, it's been a very average effort looking at it in totality. So C+, that's the final grade that the Disney era of Star Wars gets from me. And again, that's only the stuff in theaters. That's only the stuff on Disney Plus. I'm not judging necessarily anything else, but out of the stories, the new stories, at least, that they've tried to give us, it's a C+ from me. That's going to be the report card and the final grade for Star Wars. Were you able to get yours? Do you have your final?
I'm almost there. Divided by what? How many?
It's 19 total.
19. So my score ends up being 2.57.
2.57, which is that's in between C+ and B-. Conventional wisdom 5, you typically round up, so it's about a B-, 2.7.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about a B- for you. What do you want to say? Does that feel right? Does that feel accurate for just the total output of what we've got?
Yeah, I mean, all that's close. 2.33. If I'm thinking about a GPA, 2.57 feels accurate. You know what I'm saying? Like,
just squeaking on by. We just
you
kind of
barely, you might be passing. You gonna walk across the stage, but I don't know if you're gonna get nothing else outside of that. You might not get no scholarships. You better hope you left-handed.
No,
you know
magna cum laude, none of that.
Yeah, nah. You better hope you left-handed. Hey, your parents gonna just be happy you walked across that thing, man. But yeah, that feels accurate to me. It's just, it's like some of these have effort, but it just ends up, again, what I'm saying at the beginning, man. It feels like where's the meat and potatoes? Where's the soul? Where's the excitement in a lot of these things? I think that's an easy indicator for a lot of this is how excited I am to watch it, or we have been to watch it. Very few of these that we've went down and we were like, oh man, I was excited to watch this thing. Very few. And I think, my grade and honestly your grade, they're so dang close, but I think they definitely kind of speak to that. Like, dang, I miss being excited about Star Wars. So it feels accurate to me. And yeah, man, I don't have much to say outside of that.
Yeah, B minuses and C pluses.
Ooh.
That's just, it could be worse. It could be worse. It could be a total train wreck again. And I do want to, we kind of acknowledge this. Like, occasionally you look back at these things and you think like, oh, is it as bad as we make it out to be? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. And I think a lot of even, Kathleen Kennedy and her presidency, people have been calling for her exit for a long time, which I think sometimes can be warranted. We've seen a lot of mistakes happen. We've seen things not really pan out in the ways that we imagine. But also, you do have to look at the receipts at the end of the day. You have to look at things that have worked, successes, and things that she has shepherded. She helped launch Disney Plus with a tentpole show that worked. If The Mandalorian doesn't work, Disney Plus might not be in this conversation when you talk about streaming. Her movies collectively still made $5.8 billion at the global box office. Like, that's a lot of money. All of them made over $1 billion with the exception of Solo. That is unequivocally, those are hits. Those are financial successes and wins. There are other things in the midst of that as well that she's done well. And so we can't sit here and pretend like it's been all bad. But again, when you just look at the whole picture and you tell the story of, what Star Wars has been, it's been up and down. It's just a lot of ups and downs, a big roller coaster ride. Sometimes we're doing great. Sometimes everything is all kosher and good. Other times I'm like, yo, what fucking relationship is this? Like, I need to cut you off. You might have worn out your welcome at this point. That's kind of where we are sometimes.